This last remark earned a cheer, albeit an exhausted one, which rang around the cavern for a moment, as all four roused themselves and went to work. The magpie's wing was eased carefully nearer to land, until she was close enough to a rocky outcropping that the gangplank could be extended. A circle of rocks was fashioned, far from the reach of the storm, although finding wood dry enough to do more than give off a thick protesting smoke proved a challenge. Rathbone's persistent use of flint and stone eventually yielded a cautious flame and, finally, a hearty conflagration, around which they were all very pleased to warm their hands. Shan disappeared off the ship wordlessly, though Ramsay knew the man well enough by now not to bother questioning his absence or his motives. Sure enough, his balding head poked back through a crevice in the rocks later, shining anew with fresh rainwater. "I've found a pathway that leads up to the higher reaches," he said, approaching his crewmates. Against his body, he hugged both the motionless form of a scrawny rooster as well as a few plump bananas. Shan offered the bananas to Mercia, whom he knew avoided meat with the disdain most pirates reserve for an honest day's work, then set about cleaning and preparing the bird for its final resting place, a stained cooking pot that hung above the sputtering fire. Ramsay, who had busied himself filling several casks with yet more of the fresh rainwater, took the opportunity to study the man from afar and recall their first encounter. Every ship needs a quartermaster, with a brain that can juggle 1,000 calculations every hour, tallying every spilled pint of greasy grog and each shot fired in anger, not to mention working out where the crew's next meal is coming from. Ramsay had had no clue who might fulfill such a role on his voyage into the Devil's Shroud, but Shan had come recommended by Rowena, one of Ramsay's few close friends, despite the fact that she always kept her feet firmly on dry land. As the owner and proprietor of one of the largest and most dependably disreputable taverns on the coast, Rowena was the de facto matriarch of the town where she and Ramsay had grown up. They had played together as children. She had introduced Ramsay to his wife, and he, in return, had used his earnings to help purchase the pub back when she was its only barmaid. When he told her of his plan to breach the Devil's Shroud, Rowena had promised to resolve his bar stool for him, so long as he promised to come back in one piece. Rowena had also pointed Shan out across the crowded bar, a lithe and balding figure with a pronounced tan, a series of silver rings in one ear, and an intricate tattoo that ran down his arm. He was older than Ramsay, perhaps 50 or so, which was both unusual and impressive. Very few pirates lived long enough to think about retiring. What little hair he had left was already a snowy white. Dressed in a plain white tunic and simple knee-length breeches, careless barefooted, Shan might almost have been mistaken for a novice deckhand, were it not for the aura of calm that seemed to surround him. He presented a lone oasis of tranquility amid the hustle and bustle of raucous enjoyment, while his fingers worked deftly and ceaselessly on something. Intrigued, Ramsay moved closer and wordlessly took a seat opposite, keen not to disturb the man in the middle of whatever creative whimsy had overtaken him. He watched with interest as toothpicks, carved wood, and scraps of cloth napkin were gradually whittled and tied to complete a tiny model pirate ship.